Hello and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be part of a series that I'm going to produce called Anyone Can Climb 7A. I firmly believe that the ability to climb 7A is within absolutely every single one of you who climbs. There's a few things that you need to get right to be able to do that. Each part of this series will look at those things in detail. Part 1 of the series is titled Tactics and Attitude. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of training in the subsequent parts of this series, I'd like to look at the attitude and the tactics that are required to actually climb 7A. As I say, I think everybody can climb 7A. It's not beyond the realms of possibility for somebody who climbs regularly, and that is the first tip that I'm going to give you in this series. Climbing regularly is the key to climbing hard, in my opinion. Whether that's 6A, 7A, 8A or 9A, you have to climb regularly. It doesn't mean you've got to climb every day, it just means you've got to spend the time to develop your movement skills, your comfort of climbing and your exposure to the sport. The more time you spend on a rope climbing, the more time you spend on the rock climbing, the better you are. If your goal of climbing 7A is to climb 7A on rock, then it's no surprise that you need to spend a lot of time climbing on rock. I really believe that up to around about 7A, 7B, you can climb those grades just by climbing a lot. But it's not possible for everybody to climb a lot. That's why we need to supplement that climbing with other training sometimes. As far as tactics go, the first and most important tactic is, have you actually tried 7A? There are so many people who I speak to who say to me, Mike, I want to climb 7A. So the first question I ask them is, how many 7As have you tried? And what happens when you try those 7As? And you'd be amazed at the amount of people who turn around and say they've never actually tried a 7A. So how can you possibly climb a certain grade if you don't know what it takes to actually climb at that grade? So my advice for everybody, if you want to try a particular grade, if you want to climb a particular grade, is go out and try that grade, okay? I don't mean go crazy. I want to climb 9C, but I'm not going to go and try a 9C tomorrow. That's ridiculous, isn't it? But if I wanted to climb a long endurance-based 8A, without knowing what a long endurance-based 8A feels like, it's really hard for me to know what I need to do to train and prepare for that. On the subject of tactics, and linked with climbing regularly, to climb 7A, you've got to be able to fall off, and you've got to be reasonably comfortable with falling off. Lots of people, certainly in the UK, have come to sport climbing from a background of trad climbing where the predominant attitude is the leader must not fall, okay? Everybody has heard that phrase before in the UK, the leader must not fall. That's for trad climbing. For sport climbing, that is completely the wrong attitude to take. If you spend enough time at any popular sport crag, you will see that 99% of the time people are either falling or dangling on a rope, versus 1% of the time where people are actually climbing, okay? That is standard across most sport crags. If you're not falling off and you're worried about falling off, then your head game isn't going to allow you to push yourself, because as soon as you get above a bolt, you're going to start over gripping. You're going to lose focus, you're going to lose track of what you're doing, your climbing is going to go out of the window, your technique is going to dive, all because you're scared of falling off. So you've got to expose yourself to falling, you've got to become more comfortable with falling. Nobody that I know is totally okay with falling 100% of the time. That just doesn't happen, okay? It's against human nature to be okay with falling off. But there's coping strategies. The more you expose yourself to it, the more you fall off, the more experience you have of falling off in a variety of situations, the better you are going to be when you're climbing above a bolt, and therefore the more likely you are to climb better. Tactics also leads us into something which I think a lot of people, again, in the UK struggle with, and this is the difference between red pointing and on-site climbing. Again, I think in the UK, a lot of people come from a trad background where the predominant ethic is to on-site every single route that you try. If you don't on-site it, you don't bother. I've been there, I've done that, and often when I'm trad climbing, I do try and on-site things. Sport climbing is a little bit different though. To really push yourself on a sport climb and to really push your body to its maximum capability, you have to red point a route. Because by red pointing a route, you refine that beta and you can climb things as efficiently as possible. You can't do that when you're on-siting unless you have a shed load of experience climbing at a particular grade. So, for example, people like Alex Megos, Adam Ondra can on-site 8A, 8B, 8C because they have so much experience climbing at those grades. If you're trying to edge into a grade for the first time, like 7A, You're not going to on-site it unless you're really flipping strong and really flipping fit, and actually you're probably already operating above that grade. Red pointing is the key to breaking into a new grade, and actually the process of red pointing, you learn so much, you gain so much benefit from red pointing a route. It's almost training in itself. I've come to really love and understand red point climbing and really love the process of red pointing a route. The next tactic which will help you climb your first 7A is to choose the right route. What do I mean by that? Well, just because a route is 7A doesn't mean it's the same as the other 7A next to it. Largely, every single route is different. Breaking into a new grade is about understanding where your strengths are, understanding what your weaknesses are, and then being able to choose a route which allows you to use your strengths to your advantage. So for example, personally, I do quite well, or have done quite well in the past, on more bouldery style routes where the crux is quite hard and maybe there's a good rest with slightly easier climbing to finish, for example. And that's because of my background in bouldering. But somebody who has more of a background in endurance climbing, maybe they've done a lot of trad climbing in the past, might prefer to break into a new grade on a longer endurance route where the climbing is maybe less difficult but more sustained. Knowing where your strengths are and knowing where your weaknesses are is key for breaking into a new grade, and don't be afraid to use that to your advantage. Of course, one of the nice things about climbing is when you can climb a particular grade across multiple styles. And for me, that's something I aspire to do once I've broken into a new grade. Something that I see a lot with people who are operating in the sort of 6C to 7A area is a complete lack of warm-ups or proper warm-ups at the crag. I think a lot of people, if they were to warm up properly, would be amazed at how much difference it makes to their climbing. For most people who are new to sport climbing, a warm-up might consist of going and climbing a 6A or a 6B and then jumping straight onto their project and trying to on-site it, and then they wonder why they end up really pumped on their 7A project, which is the hardest thing they've ever tried. If those people spent a little bit of time at the bottom of the crag following a structured warm-up to help their muscles become recruited, to get their body ready to perform, I think they would be amazed at how much difference that makes when they actually try to perform. Something that I think is key is having a warm-up that is consistent every time you do it, because your body learns that process of warming up. In my warm-up, I try to have some benchmarks, and by that I mean I try to have some parts of the warm-up that I know if I can achieve those things, I'm ready to try my hardest. So if I'm bouldering, it might be I can do a dead hang on the smallest hold of my portable fingerboard. If I'm route climbing, it might be that I can do a density hang session on the biggest hold of my portable fingerboard. Yes, I take a portable fingerboard to the crag because it means that I can warm up really effectively. At a lot of crags in the UK, the warm-up routes are around about 7A, and this is something that I struggled with for a long time. I would go somewhere like Malham, and the routes that I would be trying to red point would be other people's warm-up routes. It's really hard if you're trying to warm up on your project. So if you take a portable fingerboard to the crag, then at least you can do some consistent pulls, some consistent hangs that your body is used to. You can set some benchmarks, and you know once you tick those benchmarks off, you're ready to try hard. Do not fall into the trap of thinking that the walk into the crag is your warm-up. Warming your legs up and getting your heart rate going is only part of a warm-up. Recruiting the muscles in your forearms so that you can pull really hard is so important. The final thing for me that sits within that bracket of tactics of people who want to climb 7A is rest. Do not underestimate the importance of being well rested and well recovered before you try your project. And that can mean several things. That can mean resting within the day. So again, it's quite common for people to go to the crag to climb their 6A, 6B warm-up, to beat out their partner and then jump straight on their project. That period of time between them warming up and trying their project might not actually be long enough for them to recover effectively. I find that a minimum of half an hour is enough time for me to recover between goes on a project and between warming up and trying the project. It's also really important to stay warm during that time though, so maybe do a few pulls on your hangboard, maybe do a little bit of jogging up and down the crag to keep your body temperature up. Put your big down jacket on, put your gloves on to belay. Avoid getting too cold between goes. Rest can also mean being well rested before you go to the crag and try your project. So maybe it's not the best idea to absolutely thrash yourself on an auto belay the day before you go to try your 7A project. Maybe build in some rest days before your project. Research does actually show that doing some strength training before trying hard on your project with a rest period in between might not be a bad idea, but I personally find I need to be well rested and I wouldn't want to train certainly the same day as trying the project, maybe the day before. The final thing for me is attitude. You have to have the right attitude to climb any grade, whether that's 6A, whether that's 9A, okay? I think that climbing 7A is the first point within sport climbing where you have to actually want to climb hard. No 7A is truly easy. You've got to have a good reason for wanting to climb the route. I find that having an inspirational line, a route with some cool history, really helps me to get motivated to climb something rather than just picking a random route in a guidebook. So if you're breaking into a new grade for the first time, make sure it's a route that you really want to do, because you might have to invest a lot of time into it as well. So to summarise, try a route that is 7A. Don't be afraid to try something. You're not going to know how it feels like until you try it. Practice falling, take some falls, get comfortable with it. Find a belayer who you trust, go to the climbing wall, do some falling exercises. I'll do a separate video at some point about how you can improve your head when you're climbing, how you can build up to fall training. But for now, pick a climbing partner who is experienced and knows how to hold falls. Go to the climbing wall with them and practice some falls. Climb regularly. It's so important to climb. The more climbing you do, the more time you spend on rock, the better your technique, the better your footwork, the more comfortable you are on rock. The quicker you read sequences, the more efficient you are. There's so many benefits to climbing regularly, beyond training even. If you're climbing regularly, as I say, there's no reason why you can't just climb 7A. If you're unable to climb regularly, that's when you might need to supplement with some training. Use red pointing to your advantage. Do not get sucked into on-sighting every single route. Do not think that you're going to push your grade by on-sighting all the time. Red pointing makes such a big difference when breaking into a new grade. Choose the right route and make sure you want to climb that route. Choose a route that uses your strengths to your advantage and actually want to climb it. Make sure it's an inspirational line. Make sure the route really draws you in. And the final and almost the most important thing, rest appropriately and recover. Don't try your project when you're knackered. Think about how you structure your projecting day. Think about how much sleep you get the night before. Think about how much food you've eaten. Make sure you've eaten the right kind of food. All of these little things, all of these tactics and this attitude come together to help you climb a harder grade. I hope you found that video useful. Please remember to smash the subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop me a message or send me an email. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, whether it's related to training or anything related to climbing. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm Mike Nolan _climbing. On Facebook, I'm Mike Nolan Mountaineering. You can get in touch with me through that for any instructing, guiding, coaching, training plans, remote coaching. I do all of those kind of things. More details there on my website, which is mikenolanclimbing.co.uk. Thanks a lot for listening. Look forward to seeing you all very soon. Cheers.